Welcome to Chessscape. I'm very excited today to show you actually the Trompowsky attack and the traps to avoid to play in this opening. Why do I want to show you this opening? Because when you play this, which is like basically playing very early bishop g5, you avoid basically all the theory with people who are playing the Queen's Gambit, people who are playing, for instance, the King's Indian defense or even the Nimzo Indian defense. For instance, after knight f6, you will play the same move. And this is what I like. If they play this move d5 or they play knight f6, you are still playing bishop g5. This is the idea. So it's less theory for you and less work. So if you play bishop g5, they have few ways to answer. They can play e6, for instance, d5, c5, knight e4. These are the main variations. Okay, let's start with knight e4, which is kind of like the main move that people are playing. You have different ways of playing. You can play h4, and if they take, for instance, then you are opening this column for the rook, which is pretty amazing. And the next move, what you're going to do is that you're threatening a move like g6. For instance, if they play e6, you're going to play this. And look at the structure that they get. Because obviously they cannot take with this pawn, otherwise they lose the rook, right? That's a great position for white, because you're going to be playing with e3, bishop d3, and you're always going to have a target on the g6 pawn, because this pawn is pinned. So, for instance here, if they play a move like d5 or knight c6, let's say, for instance, a move like, after e3, if they play a move like d5, you're going to play this. And you're already targeting bishop takes g6. Actually, you're even targeting a move like rook takes pawn. Because if rook takes, then bishop takes with a check. And you get the rook back. So this is after the move h4. But this is not the move that I recommend to play. I think the best move here is to play bishop f4. And now they have few ways to answer. They can play d5, they can play c5. Okay, or they can play a move like e6, but the best moves are going to be d5, for instance. You continue developing very normally because you want this bishop out. And if they play a move like bishop f5, you play bishop d3, and there is a trick. If they play a move, for instance, like c5, they lose in this position because you can play the move f3, which is pretty, because now if they play, for instance, obviously they have to protect this bishop. So if they play knight d6, he loses on the spot by playing bishop take, right? If they take here, you take this knight, and you're winning one piece, right? Because if they take, look, I'll let you count the material, but as you can see, we are winning. If after playing knight d6, you take on d6, I mean, you're already winning, because obviously if they take back, you simply take the bishop. Okay, so that's the first trap. They have to be extremely careful. After bishop f4, d5, e3, they should be playing, so they play bishop f5, for instance, you play bishop d3, they have to play a move that actually protects the bishop, because this was your threat. And yeah, that's a good game. I mean, you're going to be playing with knight e2, castle. This knight is going to come here, and you're going to prepare c4, attacking this pawn. This is how you're going to play in this. Okay, I have a lot to show you, and I promised you that it was going to be in 10 minutes. And this is really hard. So after bishop g5, knight e4, you play bishop f4. They have this, I guess that's the most complicated variation, is when they play this move c5. And now I recommend you play f3. You bother the knight and you don't let him breed. He has a few ways to play here. I mean, he can go back on f6. Now I recommend that you take on c5. Why? Usually what he's going to do to get the pawn back is that he's going to check. And if you want to play a game that is like, I guess, on the quiet side, you're going to play queen d2. And actually, I won a lot of games this way. After queen take, you play queen c3 and proposing the exchange. And most people actually in blitz are doing things like this and actually getting... for some reason, they don't see that the bishop... It's not very common that the bishop on c8 is already attacked. So, and if they take your queen, you simply take and you have a good position. You're going to play with e4, long castle, putting the bishop on c4 or on c5, and it's going to be great. And you're going to be pushing the pawns, and you have the center, you have an advance in development. That's how you're going to play this one. Okay, let's get back to it. After f3, the best move for black here is to play queen a5 check. And you have to simply play c3 or knight d2. Is up to you, but you can play c3 in this position. And now they have to go back with the knight, right? Knight f6, for instance. And you can decide to close, kind of closing the center by playing d5. And they will play a sort of like Benko position by playing d6, g6, bishop g7. And we're going to be playing e4, you know, bishop d3, knight e2, and castle. And this is how you're going to be playing in this one. Okay. If they play here, for instance, a move like e6, now you have to play this because the bishop is pinning the knight, so the knight cannot take on e4. And usually what they do is they play h6, you take the knight, queen take, and now I recommend you play knight c3. And this is, I'm going to give you the plan, which is Karpov's plan here, that is pretty nice. You're going to put the queen on d2, right? You're going to actually short castle, and you're going to put the bishop here or on c4. On c4 is even better. The knight will come on e2 here, and you're going to castle, and one day you will play f4. And the reason for it, so let me show you. So after knight c3, usually they play moves like d5, you can play e5, for instance, or they can decide to even play a move like d6. So you go bishop c4 here. If they play bishop e7, you go here. If they castle, you castle. And then what you're going to do is f4, f5, and you're actually exploiting the fact that the queen is on the wrong square here on f6 by having the rook basically attacking it. All right, so that's the plan for this one. You have other plans, like for instance, if they play like this, e3 and bishop f5, you can decide to also play c5, for instance, in this variation. They can decide to play a move like e5. And this is a very good move because you have to be careful about this c4 because they have e5, right? And now, I mean, however you take, the reason why they played it is that they develop pieces very fast. Now, you cannot put the knight here because obviously you have two attacks. You cannot put the knight on d2, so you have to play king e2. And that's a situation where, you know, just queen h4 attacking the pawn on f2, and it's extremely hard to play. It's not easy. I mean, you can play a move like bishop g3, but still, look at the position of this king. Look at this bishop because of it. So that's not great, but so you have to be careful. So that's the reason why we play the best move, which is bishop d3 here, right? Okay, and then you develop very harmoniously actually by playing knight e2 and castle. You also have things where if they play the move d5, for instance, it's called the semi-Trompowsky, you still play bishop g5, and I like it because now they cannot actually move the pawn. And also if the bishop comes here, then you can trade the bishop and damage their pawn structure. So I like it a lot. And usually if they do something like c5, for instance, here, you can simply grab the pawn. If they play, for instance, something like queen a5 check, here, you can just play knight c3. And after they grab, I mean, they can even take, or usually what they will do in the game is play e6 to actually take with the bishop. And now you have this move that is e4. This is very strong. This is a great position for white with a very nice trap, is that they can take. And now there is a very nice move for white. I'll give you 2 seconds to find it. So the move here is b4. The reason is the queen is protecting this square because we're attacking and threatening checkmate. So the queen cannot leave this square. If the queen takes, simply queen d8 is checkmate. So after b4, there is only one square, which is queen c7. Now you play knight b5. And now queen d7 is the only move, and you simply take the queen. And as you can see, if the bishop takes, it's checkmate again. Here, the king is, it's game over. All right, so they have to take with the king. And now you long castle, you don't let him breed. And now he has to go on c6. And yeah, that's not an ideal position to play, but you can simply play knight d4 check, for instance. As you can see, I mean, just bishop f4 here is already very, very painful for black because they have to come back on the d file like king d7 and, you know, knight b5 check and king e7, for instance. And anyway, I mean, that's the dream position for white. I don't need to show you how to win this. The best move actually here against bishop g5 is to play c6. And their idea is to play queen b6. And here you just play normal chess and you play e3. And now they play queen b6 because they are targeting the pawn on b2. And usually the best way here is to defend it by playing queen c1. And also queen c1 is great because one day you're going to be playing c4. So they can play bishop f5 and now c4. Okay, and once you play c4, you have to be extremely careful because they have this variation. And if you take back straight away, you actually lose a piece because they take here, take back, and check. And as you can see, is also attacking the bishop. And it's a check. So you have to be extremely careful with this, right? Because they win this way. So when they take on c4, you don't need to take back straight away. You can just play a simple move, which is knight d2, and you will win this pawn. And develop your knight here. One day you will take and just short castle, and you have an okay position with, I mean, white is better here. So here, there is another way of playing against knight e4, which is playing bishop h4. And bishop h4, they can play now d5 or c5. It depends. They can play this. They can play c5 as well. c5, I think, is the sharper, basically, variation. You have to be careful to play a move here. You can play knight d2 here. You can play knight c3, or you can play f3. This kind of moves. If you play a move like queen d3, this is not great because the black have an amazing move, which is queen b6. And if you take the knight, they take on b2, and now they're threatening this. And you can't save it, unfortunately. So you lose in the exchange. So if you don't take and you play a move, for instance, like b3, and that's the reason why this move was amazing, is now he has queen h6. He's attacking the bishop, and also he's threatening queen c1. If he plays a move like bishop g3 now, he goes check. The only move is queen d1 in this position, and now queen b2. And we're threatening the same thing. Now he has to play knight d2, which is the only move, otherwise he loses the rook. And after knight d2, simply knight takes. Because if queen takes, I take the rook. So the king has to take. And now queen check. Now the king cannot come here because I take the rook. So the king has to come back to the initial square. And I have queen c3 check. This is the trick. Because now he has to play this. And now I'm taking finally the rook. So you have to be careful with this variation. And not play the move that is b3. So actually, you don't have to. Actually, the best is to not play this move, queen d3. I mean, don't put your queen out too early in this variation. And instead, I think the best move here is to play. I mean, I like this move, knight d2. I mean, I think that's a very nice move. They can play, for instance, d5. They can trade. You take with the queen. Yeah, usually they take on d2 and then queen take. The position is fine, and they will most likely take here on d4, and you can simply take play knight f3. You don't have to take straight away, because if queen takes, he wins the tempo by playing knight c6, attacking the queen. So you can play this, and the next move you will be taking, and the position is about equal, I would say. After knight c6 here, you simply take the pawn. So when they play knight f6 and you play bishop g5, they can decide also to play moves like, for instance, d5. And now they have a worse Queen's Indian, because what you can do is simply take. I like it a lot, because when they take with the pawn, for instance, what happens is that this pawn on d5 is extremely weak. And what you're going to do here is that you're going to play this, put the bishop here because you want him to target the square on d5. You're going to put the pawn on e3. The knight is going to come here. And then you're going to play c4. And I win a lot of positions like this by playing simply e3. Usually what they do, they play bishop e7. I go g3, they castle. I go c4, c6. And, you know, you can just either take or play bishop g2. And they go knight b... no, not knight bd7, sorry, bishop e6. You take, and play knight e2. And now the plan that you have is simply knight here, targeting this pawn. This knight will come here, targeting this pawn. The bishop is targeting the pawn as well. And then you castle. Very easy game, but this pawn is falling when you have this situation, and it happens a lot in blitz games, like really a lot. So you can castle, you can, sorry, when they play knight c6, you play knight c3, targeting this. And now, as you can see, it's really hard for them to actually do something about it. If they play, for instance, a move like f5, you just play this. You're threatening now to take on d5. So very, very hard way for them to play. You will have queen b3 one day. But anyway, this pawn is falling. There is no way that they can actually save it. And after, you just win the endgame. All right, that's it for today. I tried to show you the Trompowsky attack as fast as I could. And I think you need to go and, you know, work it. Don't start playing it without actually reviewing some variations. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one.